Hello, and thank you for watching this video. My name is Alessandra Saviotti, and I'm speaking from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, where I live, and work as curator and educator and a PhD fellows at the Liverpool John Moores University. So, as a long-term collaborator of the Associazione di Arte Útil, I'm very happy today because I'll get to ask some questions to Aetzel Griffioen, who took part in the writing process of the Convention on the Use of Space, which is a project commissioned by Casco Art Institute in Utrecht to Adelita Husni-Bey back in 2015. And the project is included in our archive. So thank you, Aetzel, for agreeing to record this interview today.
Welcome.
So just to start and to break a little bit the ice, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself first. Yes. And then we'll proceed with a couple of questions.
Okay, thank you. I am Aetzel Griffioen. I am a philosopher. I am a board member of Casco. Always good to know. And I was very active in the squatting movement, especially leading up to the squatting ban in 2010, when squatting was criminalized. As a philosopher, I work on the commons, on ecology, and more on degrowth. And I am also an educator. I work for an organization called Skill City, and we implement ecological education programs in the south of Rotterdam, where I live and where I am speaking from right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your introduction. So let's really start from the beginning. So what was your contribution to the project of Adelita?
I hosted together with my girlfriend. I hosted one meeting in our living room. So we helped, of course, with setting it up, and that also included inviting some people that we thought could give a good contribution. And so for that small part, we were co-organizers, and afterwards also I had a bit of involvement in looking at the more finished product. That's it.
Yeah, cool. Because you said that you organized the one of the first meeting in your living room. So do you think that, let's say, this process of moving a little bit from the context of the art in order to do something else and then come back to the art, what do you think it produces in the fruition of the project itself? And also, I think another aspect that I would like to talk about, and I'm curious to hear from you, is that do you think that, let's say, the process of writing collectively in a way, because like the convention has been like really a collective effort of trying to write a sort of paralegal document that could be really used.
Yes.
Right. So do you think that this process of writing collectively gave strength to folks involved in the process, or do you think that it made more difficult to for the people that were involved in the process to access this urgency from the ground of art?
I'm writing it down. Okay, no, I don't think it makes things more difficult to start with that. So the project is very engaging on both practically, intellectually, and as a group process as well. So what it produces, other than the artwork, is really this very intense interval of time in which people really give everything they have to give to the project. So it's an immense concentration creativity, and so I would say it gives strength to the people who were involved. It also gave a lot of, just positive effects. It feels, it felt very, very good. It also gave us some new relationships that have been lasting through today. So it is very inspiring. I think nobody was under the belief that this would be something that would, of course, have real legal stature, although we did talk about those things. So, so the project was itself a lens just to look at the wider landscape of what is going on. And so, it certainly was very difficult, but it didn't make things more difficult. In a way, it makes things clear because it gives you, it does give a kind of sense of direction, even though the project doesn't give something that that can be used really to enforce rights or anything like that. But it does give you an idea of what we want. So it is a tool for creating a new imaginary space. And of course, that is what we need for politics to succeed. Also talking as a board member of Casco, the same process that Adelita pioneered was later taken up by Casco to write collectively a new cultural governance code for sustainability. And so it wasn't just the end process, or the process itself, or the artwork that was produced. It was really even the process is useful for taking up again in other contexts too. So it spawned already more of itself, so to say.
Yeah, I agree, and I also joined actually a little bit of the writing process of the sustainability chart that they are trying to develop at Casco. Yeah. And I think like the fact that the convention was it's a project which has of course many layers. So it has like this process of collective writing, which is quite interesting, and I think it's also a part of the practice of Adelita and how she works. But I think that this exactly what you mentioned in respect to using this collective writing process as a way to imagine something that can happen for real, and to claim that is part of an art process is actually quite powerful, because it demonstrates that art can really be used as a tool, not just, like to make people aware that there is something that needs to be changed, but that is possible to produce real tools that can be also used by everybody else in order to address and tackle a particular urgency. So because you said at the beginning that you were part, or you are still part of the squatting movement in the Netherlands. So what do you think that this the Convention on the Use of Space might bring to the movement?
Well, I'm no longer a part of the squatting movement, but I mean, it's all 11 years now that the squatting was made illegal, and life happens. So I have a family now, and things change. But that doesn't mean that like squatting was made illegal in the Netherlands. And the punishment for squatting is quite large now in comparison to other Dutch countries, other European countries, sorry. And the squatters other people who are thinking about housing rights, of which there are of course many, are coming together in all kinds of different places to imagine this new possible futures. Right now, of course, we have a new economic crisis. There is still a lot of empty space, of houses there that are not used or from which the renters have been evicted to speculate on the ground, even by the housing corporations who are supposed to house people that cannot afford market rents or buying a house. And so squatting is definitely entering a new wave, I would say. But so is, and that is what I think is really interesting, and to which Adelita's project speaks, is the wave for new, very small housing collective, housing corporations, or housing commons. And so that doesn't directly contribute to only the squatting movement. Mm-hmm. It connects more with just the movement for the right to housing, I would say, and the squatting movement is part of that, but it isn't only about squatting, or I mean, there are different ways you can talk about squatting, and for me at least, squatting has always been a means to enforce the possibility of making a living for people who otherwise cannot. And so the convention is also talking about rights for everybody, so not just citizens, let's say. And this, yeah, well, this is just I see it as a part of the conversation around this. And in the Netherlands, the squatting ban has narrowed that conversation. Mm-hmm. And in reaction, I think also a bit the move, or maybe even the flight to art spaces was necessary, because for squatting was a means for activists to be able to also work on other kinds of activism. And so a lot of, it's fair to say that squatting in the Netherlands was a base for activists of all kinds of ilk, to be able to organize themselves and not have to deal too much with housing problems, but to do other kinds of things. And so art in general now, what I want to say is that squatting was a place where activists could organize. This place is, of course, still there, although there was this narrowing down and it became a little harder. But art is the other place.
Yeah.
So to say. So it is good that we move then to art and to address the possibility of making this space anew. And from that imaginary of the commons, and the imaginary of the commons, we see now that even the organizations that are not working on squatting, but that are working on housing rights themselves, that they are have so far been unconnected to art, but they are now themselves seeing that they need to make this move towards art. That the conversation should not anymore be just about very detailed problems on housing rights in this city or that city, or in the Netherlands in general, or in Europe, but that it should be a cultural conversation. So I think that Adelita's project really made this very clear. Made this. She was ahead, let's say, of this move.
Yeah, exactly. And in respect to that, I was thinking that like the convention as a sort of, let's say, a model, if you want to call like that, even if it's very specific, the way that she conceived together with you and together with the folks that help in this writing process, because it's very precise and it tackles like an issue, which is housing rights, but also a very specific issue which happens in the Netherlands, then it doesn't exclude the fact that the document or like the convention can be taken and adapted to also another context. And I think this is quite interesting because the convention has been also presented and translated in Spanish. And I think she has been working also for the context of the UK. So exactly like you said, like there is this idea that perhaps things there is no alternative to, you know, like the crazy gentrification and the exploitation of other people, and you know, like misplacement of people that they cannot afford to live in places that are becoming more and more expensive. Like for instance, in Amsterdam, I know very well that is quite an issue, you know, but I guess also in Rotterdam. But the fact that this convention is using some in a transdisciplinary way, is using a little bit of the language of also of the legal in order to imagine something else. And you know, like if we are still talking about that, about the convention now that 6 years have passed, but we know very well that the urgency is still here. And in a way, it's becoming
only more so.
Exactly, it's becoming more and more urgent. I'm also curious to understand a little bit if you see something that has been changing a little bit in terms of like policy or you know, like a little bit on. I'm curious to hear from you if you have an idea of how the convention open up, let's say, new possibility of conversation, or also if you notice some effect on policy level, etc., etc.
Yes, it's not per se related to the convention itself, of course, but it did capture. It definitely did capture this idea of a new ways of thinking about this. So earlier on, let's say, what I meant is that squatting was a place for thought, for new political configurations, for activism, but also, of course, for okay, the kind of world that we want to help come into place, and in the housing movement, this move to art was not made, but art is that other place where this also happens a lot, and where it is still possible, and maybe also because in the academy it is also still possible. It's becoming harder, and so these new ways of thinking have definitely had an impact on the Dutch landscape. I think more so in other countries. In fact, for instance, in Germany, much more on these housing commons that are being made there. So, for instance, in the Netherlands, there are also more and more projects who want to become housing commons, especially in Amsterdam. It is difficult. The Amsterdam municipality is working on this as a matter of policy. Then nowhere else they are doing this, or in Rotterdam they are saying they are doing it, but they make it impossible to actually make this move. And there are no banks who are supporting this in the Netherlands. So now there's a German bank who is finally starting to help also people, groups from outside of Germany. So I think this claim against speculation, that is very, that's a big part of the convention. And this claim against speculation, this imaginary, has definitely been capturing more and more people. The fact that we in the Netherlands, of course, used to have this fantastic model for cheap housing for the majority of the population. It used to be an example for people from all over the world. But since the privatization of these housing corporations in 1996, this model has become under increasing pressure. Houses have become more expensive. No new houses could be built. The housing corporations are milked by the Dutch government. A lot of money is being taken out of them in forms of a special taxation, and at the same time they cannot really start new processes. So we have a very big housing shortage in the Netherlands, and so people are coming together to make their new kinds of associations for housing. And they write in their statuten, in their
policy, regulation, something like
that.
Yes,
so the foundation, the fundamental rules for their foundations or associations are about the fact that they can, once such an organization is put up, it cannot be sold.
Okay.
So this idea of trying to take things out of the market, out of the free market, this is something that was really very influential for the convention. And this is what people are working on in real life. And I would say more so, it is people doing that than it is policy that enables this. But the idea is becoming more prevalent. And so if you look at one of the most active housing associations for housing rights in the Netherlands, they're called LSA. They very recently, a couple of days ago, brought out an essay by an architect and a philosopher who are both working on housing. And in this essay, they say that this really needs to become a cultural fight. It needs to become a matter of culture. We need to work together with artists and just all kinds of people who are working on their housing rights. Also, in order to connect and to make it to make everybody see that this is not only your fight, or right, it's not you and your people who are working on this thing, but this is a very large issue, and it has been very difficult to address this when we just talk as pressure groups or activists only on this or that policy or this or that law. And so they themselves really see now that it should become a cultural matter. And it's very interesting because so far, these kind of associations that really activist organizations that really work on the policy or on the implementation of these things in housing commons, for them, the art world was something that was too free, too liberal, too, also not hands-on enough. And the fact that they are making this move, that's very interesting, I think.
Yeah.
And also very necessary.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. And also it made me think about what is happening. I'm not sure if there is something similar in the Netherlands. I'm sure that there is another kind of model, but what's happening, for instance, in the UK is the rising of the community land trust, which is actually something that, like people organize in their own neighborhoods in order to take ownership of their houses and to redistribute the houses to the neighborhood themselves. And it made me think also about other projects, for instance, that we have in the Arte Útil archive, which are actually about that. So we have a specific project in Liverpool, which is called the Granby 4th Street Workshop. That again, like the people living in the neighborhood of Granby invited a group of artists in order to think together with them how to, like avoid dispossession and gentrification. And they came up with an art project which has this double identity, like the convention has, to be like a sort of policy or like an effort in imagination, but actually the fact that it's there, and through art it's possible to demonstrate that another way of living is possible, gave so much strength to the people that they said, okay, so we can actually do that, and we can actually do it together in order to, like claim ownership to what is already ours, because we have been living here since very long time. And, it doesn't make sense that there is the universal human rights chart that says that housing is like a basic universal right, and then on the other side, the very same people that signed this chart, they are saying, okay, but you know what, we are like renovating the neighborhood, and you can come back if you can afford that. So
yeah, no, it's very good what you say. Of course, so the community land trust is indeed a mechanism that people are trying to implement in the Netherlands too. It's very interesting. Of course, as far as I know, it originated more or less in Great Britain, and so this idea of the right to bid, the right to buy, all these community rights, they are a very interesting set of new rights. And the organization that I just talked about, the LSA, they are really pushing for having these adopted in a way that also is not just a law, but that it also is actively promoted by city governments. At the moment, as far as I know, it is still very difficult, because it's the same thing that David Cameron did with his Big Society program. He adopted this community right to bid and to buy, but that already existed, and for him it was just a matter of making people pay the same amount as what a corporation would pay if they would buy that building. And so the community land trust and these rights that are associated with it, they need to be fought for in a way that if collectives, citizen collectives, are bidding for an empty hospital or any such kind of building where they want to put up their own projects, they shouldn't be made to pay the market value.
Yeah.
That is completely unfair. So that is what I think in the 80s was in Great Britain was understood very well. And then especially with the Big Society program and David Cameron, this was basically left over, which to me is just a heaving over of public debt to private debt.
Yeah.
So this is a very dangerous mechanism, and this is where we are, as far as I understand it now, in the Netherlands too, and this is what we need to leave behind. And so it's also again that this is let's say one entry point to a very large talking point, and if we only address such a specific policy, then it's then we are just a niche activist. And so to make this a cultural thing is also to connect it to other things again. And of course, like artists like Jana van Heeswijk are of course also working on this community land trust idea and neighborhood cooperations, like here, just around the corner in the Afrikanerwijk Corporation. And I think also in Bristol and
in Liverpool too.
Yeah, in Liverpool too. And so yes, this space is so. This is a very good space, interesting space for imagination, but also these practical, let's say, real. If we're talking about the economy, it's like not the speculative economy, but the real material economy, that these things have an effect into.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I think it's a very good point where to end, because where we are trying also to do through, like researching and gathering new projects, but also gathering, way of narrating these kind of projects, and especially about what art can do rather than what art is. I think it's very important, because as a space of imagination becomes really the space of the possibility, like this kind of projects do. And we mentioned a couple during this chat. So yeah, I think thank you very much for your time, and also for sharing with me your involvement with the project, and then of course your experience and your idea. And yeah, until soon, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.